second. You ready? Welcome to the June, is it the 7th?
Yeah, well, it's right there.
Of the DC chapter of KMI. Douglas isn't here. This is like a first. So we're
on our own?
Going to run the asylum.
I know.
This is free game. So I'm Jim Walker. I'm with Toolwire, and as is typical of these meetings, we do take a moment to introduce ourselves. We thank you all for coming, of course. Again, I'm Jim Walker. I work for a company called Toolwire, and we are actually partnered with the Thomson company, and a lot of you know Thomson. I know, Martin, you do, from all the regulatory things they do, Westlaw, Thomson Dialogue. It's just content, $8 billion worth of content every year. And I was telling Swanee that I give him credit because IBM has put together and I usually say this every month, but I'm interested in not only the content and knowledge management, but also now I'm in the training environment. So Toolwire offers live labs for IT workers. We allow IT guys to log in from a browser and actually practice the concepts that they learn from Thomson content. David James Clark IV is co-founder of
Big long
Toolwire.
name.
Started with a company, Logilent, from California. It's kind of the two guys in the garage. He put a couple of Cisco routers in a garage and thought, wouldn't it be great to have people log in and be able to configure these and practice? And that was in 1994, and Toolwire bought Logilent a couple of years ago. So David has written books on Novell, some 34 books on Novell for training. He also wrote the Golf for Dummies with Gary McCord.
For any golfers in the room? Yeah, I'm serious. That's a good connection. Don't you see the connection?
Go figure.
Yeah, I know. UC Berkeley, Gary McCord. I mean,
Yeah.
I worked at Disney for a while. I mean, I got the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but now he's not only co-founder, but he's innovator. We call him the innovator. And he and I have been on the road doing a whole road show around innovation. It's been really exciting to a lot of learners. But David's been published in CLO magazine. Tonight he's going to talk about the Nexus of Learning. I forget, could somebody tell me what the title of this is? Because that'll segue me over to Don there. But it has to do with this notion of learn, practice, assess. I think we all agree that there's a cycle. You can't commit things to memory until you practice it, and then an assessment as to what you learned, some remediation if you need it. So that's what tonight's about. So Don Boucher, I've got some things on him, and I'm just startled here. This is incredible. Probably live. Vice President of Government Business Development for Thomson Prometric. So Thomson Prometric is the testing and assessment arm of the $8 billion Thomson company. Spent 21 years in the military, very distinguished career, it says here.
So it must be true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this one. He was the first guy. He established the first multi-award IDIQ contract vehicle. So there's nobody else that can make that claim. He did it. Isn't that great? We all deal with IDIQs, right?
We have him to thank.
Yeah. But the startling thing, Don, is that I went to Western New England College.
You're kidding me.
No. Now, how often does that happen?
That's pretty
It's
seldom.
like this little business school in Springfield, Massachusetts. I'm sure you studied. I mean, I went there.
No, I got some other guy to do it for me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's just an amazing coincidence. So David's going to start off with the Nexus of Learning. I think you saw an abstract on that.
We're all going to search for the Nexus of Learning. Then when we find it, I hand it over to Don.
Yeah. And he's going to complete the
Yeah. And then he'll hand it back, and I will talk about some examples.
And I'm going to sit here and give you first.
So thank you very much. So the whole idea of tonight is, and we won't take hours and hours, but the whole idea is the concept. This is a very nebulous keynote I gave at a CLO conference about a year ago, and it was an interesting precursor to another presentation which Jim alluded to. I've been on the road doing around something I call the 12th Innovation, and it's an innovation and talk about facilitator. I gave this morning a presentation in Atlanta about innovation, and the people there in the audience, all of the instructors say, you know, we're not instructors anymore, we're facilitators, because the millennials, the new students who are coming along, are driven by co-creation. And so knowledge now isn't just books and presentations in a classroom environment, but they're wikis and blogs and iTunes and things of that nature, where the student gets involved in the creation, and then managing that knowledge becomes quite a chore. Not just managing it, but also being able to get the student involved in a collaborative environment. So that's a little bit of kind of where our head's at right now, and that's kind of the angle I'm going to take a little bit on the Nexus of Learning. But the Nexus of Learning is more about searching for nirvana, and that nirvana point where learning and job kind of get that line starts to get a little fuzzy, and the concept of you have just in case learning, and then you have on the job learning, and you know, wouldn't it be cool if we could find a way to bridge those two? So that's what we're going to talk about. Then we're going to go over to a little bit about assessment and knowledge management, and then come back to some examples. So I like to start, just like any good presentation, in the beginning. And just a little bit of context. So we're going to establish a little bit of context where we've been so that we can understand where we're going from a learning perspective. So hopefully this will be a review for everyone. So in the beginning, learning was unstructured. So if you go back to the caveman days, you know, one caveman would go out, beat the woolly mammoth. Another one would see, hey, cool, you know, that worked. So I'm going to, through observation, I'm going to mimic that behavior. So that's unstructured learning. Then, fortunately for all of us, structured learning was born. And you all recognize, of course, your high school math teacher. And structured learning, of course, begat the classroom, which we can all appreciate, you know, the singular modality of the classroom and how that just completely puts us to sleep, but hasn't changed in thousands of years. Yes?
Actually, I was thinking about this when you were talking about the collaboration. My high school was actually fairly unique in it used a system called the Harkness method, where all classes were taught at large oval tables, which meant you had to keep class size pretty small before you needed.
Oh, cool.
So the teacher was just one spot at that table, and just like you said, was the facilitator. Not the authoritative figure that... Including, you know, like even math classes. I mean, not just English classes and history classes, but including like math classes.
Now, where was this?
It was in Exeter, New Hampshire.
That's fairly innovative. Are you a millennial kind of Gen X kind of person? Because that's pretty. That's pushing the envelope, I think, a little bit.
Well, they've been
You don't get that in public school.
I know. Yeah.
They've been doing it that way for a long time, though. It's
that's cool.
It's not a new age method. So.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting. I'm coming out and really evangelizing to a certain degree some very radical ideas like that, you know, to corporate America and to certain, and people are shocked by the lack of innovation, but then you say you've been doing that for 15 years, so there are pockets of innovation. Yes?
Well, you know,